training 16. So awesome. We're on the second half of them, of the 30 days. So welcome. This one is called Achieve Your Impossible Goals in Your Career Part 2. I am Meredith Hawley. I'm a lawyer, power dynamics facilitator, and best-selling author, and I help employees stop sexual harassment without quitting their jobs. One of the ways that we help people stop sexual harassment without quitting their jobs, and this is surprising to a lot of people, is we help them set and achieve impossible goals. Often one of the impossible goals is even the idea that they could stop the sexual harassment in their environment. To some people that seems impossible, but we have seen it happen and know that it is possible. So when we are in the first part of this training, we talked about making the contract and how you make the contract work and how you do the mutual exchange and how you know you're going to achieve your impossible goal and you open to the possibility of it. So a lot of times the next problem that I see people have after the first problem I see people have is that they're reluctant to even be clear and set these goals, right? The second problem I see people have is once we've set the goal, we want to get there right away. We want to be there yesterday. We want to live in that. And then we kind of use that as a method to shame ourselves, even that vision of what we're open to the possibility of. We kind of can use to say that there's something wrong with our environment now, that everything we're doing now is wrong, and then we just get stuck. Like we get stuck in this paralysis place, and that doesn't work, right? Like you can't move forward if you're using that future goal to beat yourself up and to criticize where you are now. When we're doing that, what I see is we even if we like white knuckle it to achieve the goal, once we get there, we feel even worse. So I talk to business owners who have made six-figure businesses and they're like, I thought I would feel great once I got this to this place of this six-figure business, and I don't. I feel terrible, right? I feel worse. And so when we think that taking action is going to change how we feel or create that future life, a lot of times we are just getting more and more and more stuck. So I want to talk to you about this concept that I see overcome that paralysis, right? This concept I call the future boss. And I know I've talked in past trainings about how when we're dealing with work environment issues, we always want to think of ourselves as our boss first. But in this, what we're thinking about is that future vision that we talked about in the first part of this. We're thinking of that future vision of the person who created the goal, the impossible goal, and that person is your boss. You want to think about that, and then you want to have a negotiation with that person take place like you would negotiate with your boss to get a promotion. Okay, and so the way that this works, I see this in negotiations all the time when my clients are working with me. They are often like, are we done yet? Are we done yet? Are we done yet? Why do we have to go back and forth this many times? Why do things have to happen so slow? Are we done yet? And I'm always like, I know this is hard. This is the hard, tedious part when you're negotiating, but we want to take, like when we're negotiating in legal cases, in any kind of sales, in anything, when we negotiate, you make an offer, they make an offer, you make an offer, they make an offer, and you often go back and forth many times, right? And so where you are now is like an offer. That future self vision is another offer, and you want to go back and forth until you get there. But really what you're doing is you're climbing this way, right? But you want to know what the steps are, and you want to focus on the next step in your negotiation towards that future self, rather than getting stuck in the vision of what it looks like and what's wrong with where you are now. So I'm going to give you a number of steps, and I'm going to give you an example Okay, so the first step is that to actually set the impossible goal, right? To set the specific goal that's measurable. And it seems impossible to you now, but just set it anyway, right? Set this impossible goal. Then the second step is you imagine the future self, like we talked about, who has created that goal. So you imagine you could even see a person who has already created that goal. Like, so for example, if your goal is I make $100,000 in my business, there are many people who have done that. And so who's someone that you know, that you see, that you follow, who has done that? What are they like? What's their life like? What do they think? Get really close and specific with who they are, as specific as possible. What do they have for lunch? What's their favorite ice cream? What do they do on the weekend? Super specific. And that person, like, think about the version of you who has done that, right? That's your future self, right? And then you want to ask yourself, why are you not there now? So one example of this is the example I talked about that my client told me of, she believes that she's not qualified, right? So she has this belief that she's not qualified. And then what does, you want to ask yourself, what does your future self believe? So for example, your future self believes, of course I'm qualified because I've created this goal, right? And so you want to become that future self ahead of time to make that goal inevitable. Otherwise, what we see happen is the thing that I talked about, where you like white knuckle your way to the goal and it feels terrible. And then you make sure that you sabotage it in the end because it's felt terrible the whole time, right? So this is how you create the sustainable, impossible goal situation. So you do not have to change your actions in order to change your belief, right? You do not have to achieve that goal in order to believe you're qualified. You do not have to get another certification, go to another training in order to believe that you are qualified, right? You may want to, and you may want to choose to, and that's fair, right? But you want to look at whether you want to choose the belief. I'm using the example of I'm not qualified, right? It could be something else. Somebody else was telling me I'm not that smart, right? Which sounds like just an observation, but it's actually a choice. And so once you see the contrast between what you're believing now, for example, I'm not qualified, and what you're believing in that once you've achieved the goal, of course I'm qualified, right? Then you want to identify all of the belief steps in between where you are now and where you want to be. You do not have to take action in order to allow yourself to shift these beliefs. So when we're talking about the example of I'm not qualified, you start out with I'm not qualified. Then a next step is I'm open to considering that I'm qualified. Then a next step is it's possible I'm qualified. Then the next step is it's my choice to believe whether I'm qualified or not. And then I like my reason for considering myself qualified. And then of course I'm qualified. So this is just a for example of how you can shift a belief, but you negotiate that process at each step, right? And you don't, like if you're super anxious to get to the end, if you want to all of a sudden shift to of course I'm qualified from I'm not qualified, often what it does is it just makes you stuck. It just pushes you back to where you were. So you want to give yourself that scaffolding of shifting the beliefs that feel believable, shifting to a new one. So like going from I'm not qualified to I'm open to considering that I'm qualified is a step in this negotiation. And it's a crucial step, right? So once you can get to the place where you can see that it's your choice whether to keep this limitation or to let it go, then that's really the place where things can shift and where it's a lot easier to get to the place of course, I'm qualified, or it's not even relevant, right? So part of the reason that this helps you achieve impossible goals, and that the example of I'm not qualified or I'm not smart enough or all of these self-critical beliefs are important, is that often we aren't even willing to try. And these are the excuses that we make because we're too afraid to fail, right? And so one of the reasons that I say this is so important is you have something to offer the world, something important to offer the world. And do you like your reason for being where you are now in what you're offering, right? So I always say, when we want to bring something into the world, it's going to make an impact on another person. And if you picture that other person as, and the impact that you make. So I always give this example of like, somebody gets in a car wreck outside of my house and they come and knock on my door. They say, I have a broken leg. Can I use your phone? Am I going to tell that person who I could make an impact on, am I going to say, oh, I'm just not qualified to give you my phone? Do I like that reason to not, my phone's not qualified. I need to get a better phone. My phone needs an upgrade. So I'm not gonna give it to you. My phone isn't smart enough. So I'm not gonna give it to you. I would never say that. Most people would never say that if we truly believe we can make an impact. And so we want to question in the same way what beliefs we have that aren't letting us try, that aren't letting us fail. I would try and fail. I would go get a new phone if I need to get a new phone to help this person. I would go knock on a neighbor's door to help this person if the first phone that I tried didn't work, right? I would be willing to try and fail if I'm taking it seriously and taking the impact that I can make seriously. So what are you not taking seriously about the impact that you can make? What's the belief that is holding you back from making it your biggest impact? And what does your future self believe? And how can you negotiate that process one step at a time to get yourself to that belief so that you can make the impact? It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be like a bunch of classes. You don't have to do anything ahead of time to get to the place that lets you make an impact. So if you know anybody who is struggling at work, I am always happy to talk to them, send them over our way, and let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to send me a private message or comment on these videos. Any questions you have about creating a healthy workplace, I want to make sure I answer them. And thanks for watching.